Hi again.
Okay,
Sorry.
are we back on?
We are, hopefully, if you got the link and are here, then I know it went out. And I talked to Tony and he would take care of nahant.org. So we know we will have members of the public, so. I know what I can do.
Well, Sue's very disappointed because she thought she was gonna have a partner watching a new series. Now she's not.
Oh, I'm sorry, Sue. I can make it up to you. Um,
So Mike, just to finish, we keep getting interrupted, but I mean, for the past 20 years, I've recognized the housing issues and needs in the town. Everything from the seniors to the young people trying to move in, the young families, and just hoping that something could be done about it. I know that a year or so ago, when the governor was proposing zoning changes for ADUs, I thought that was an exciting opportunity. So it really began, I think, about a year and a half ago, when I asked Tony to begin to look into what would be needed for the town to accept accessory dwelling units, and how that could maybe play into our affordable housing issues. So it's been a number of things. I just want to get a group of people together that really just focused on this and get the town to focus on it.
Right. Did the legislation about the ADUs come to pass?
Yes, I think so. Yeah. So the town has to adopt those provisions of general law. And once it does that, then ADUs can be sort of a matter of right. The town is able to put restrictions and regulations on it.
Right.
So
That would be through planning board action in the zoning bylaw?
probably, yeah.
Right. Well, that's good. I thought that the only action on that front was the thing that Brendan Crichton currently has pending. So is what he's doing something different?
You can jump in, Michelle, if you.
So are we talking, yes, in my backyard? That's what we're talking about, that legislation? Yes.
Right.
That's the only one that I know of.
So, well, Mark seems to think that there was something enacted when Baker was still governor, and the Brendan Crichton thing is now pending. So it sounds as if they're two different things, both having some bearing on accessory dwelling units, right?
I'm not familiar with what the Baker administration was doing, so
Yeah.
I just know about this one.
Right. So that well, let's assume that the Brendan Crichton thing is the only possibility that deals with accessory dwelling units. Assuming that gets enacted, that would be something that would make sense to incorporate into this committee's recommendations, correct?
Should I stop it?
I think so.
Okay. I
mean, the committee hasn't dealt with it as a committee issue, but personally, I think it's something that that I believe I would be in favor of at some point.
Right.
What is that you're in favor of, Mark? I missed all of this.
I would be in favor of some form of the town accepting accessory dwelling units as a matter of right. With some restrictions and regulations attached to it.
Yeah.
But I think it has great potential.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting question. So let's assume somebody puts an accessory dwelling unit in their backyard. Does that have the ability to qualify for something that goes against the tally we need for 40B?
There are some requirements for that. I think John, MAPC could probably address that better than I could, but I believe it has the potential of doing that. Yes. There has to be,
That would be a big deal.
restricted, right?
it has to be deed restricted, and I believe it has to be deed restricted for a number of years, actually.
Mhm.
It has to be registered with a sort of either a public body or a nonprofit or something along those lines. So perhaps the Housing Authority could play a role with it, where they review and accept it and those types of things.
Mhm. I think
Patrick, you know any more about that?
What was the point? The question is it 40B?
We're talking about accessory dwelling units,
Oh, accessory dwelling units don't count for 40B.
but they could.
Oh,
I
so okay, wait, hold on. No, I'm sorry. They don't count for 3A.
Right.
They could count for 40. Yeah, you're right. If they are essentially if they're like a unit, if they're considered it really depends, Mark. I think
I know we brought it up with John Cruz earlier in one of our meetings, and he thinks it could play a role in our housing production plan.
yeah, well, it certainly could play a role in diversifying our available housing. I think that's promising. I do know it doesn't, it's explicitly in the state website. It doesn't count for the 3A part.
Yes, I'm aware of that.
Yeah, but I think it just depends. It depends what kind of ADUs we're talking about.
These ADUs are authorized pursuant to some law that was enacted either last year or before that, correct?
So that's the thing, that's the legislation that I sent out either this week, and I sent it out earlier. It's called Yes in My Backyard, which is really going to allow ADUs in all cities and towns in Massachusetts. Before it was individual cities and towns were trying to determine, but now this is going to give it,
Okay.
blank built by right.
Yeah,
I think
Okay.
the difference, Mike, is that Senator Creighton's legislation allows it as a matter of right throughout the Commonwealth. I do think that under the Baker administration, they passed some zoning reform that allowed it, provided the community adopted those provisions. So I think what Senator Creighton's legislation does is sort of allows it as a matter of right throughout the.
Well, that makes sense. So Creighton's legislation is basically expanding on what was in existence before.
I could be wrong, but that's my understanding.
I think you're right, Mark. I think we briefly looked at this at the planning board. We had a bylaw subcommittee looking at this, specifically ADUs, and we just briefly looked at some neighboring communities, and there was a wide variation in what was being allowed. I'm trying to remember I looked at Swampscott and Lexington and a few other towns, and some were attached only, some allowed detached, some required, essentially it was an in-law apartment approach where it had to be some relation to the main dwelling unit.
Owner occupied or something along those lines.
Yeah, it was like, I think familial it was maybe it was Lexington's. It was a familiar relation to the main unit. So it was really an in-law apartment only ADU.
and an in-law only apartment, I gather, would not qualify for 40B.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so, but
Mhm.
that would be too restricted. I would think it would have to be essentially its own apartment. More akin to a two-family home than an ADU.
Well, in
Or
other words,
or a detached, dwelling,
Ye-
right?
right, but it'd have to be available on the market just like any other dwelling unit.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, it couldn't be so restricted that it was just for your family or something like that.
Yeah, I think some of the criteria under 40B, as Jim said, it has to be deed restricted. It has to be, I think, managed or reviewed by a public agency such as a housing authority or something along the state housing department or something along those lines. It could be a nonprofit, I think, but yeah, I'm not quite sure. I think John, I think MAPC could probably address that certainly better than I could, but
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you couldn't just have your family rent a ADU from yourself and count that as your 40B. But yeah, I mean, it sounds like there's some potential depending on how it's structured in Nahant for that to potentially count.
mhm,
But it has to be deed restricted, so I think that would be difficult to
right.
for someone to economically justify that creating an ADU. Usually it's just either a single detached dwelling or another apartment attached to the main house. Yeah, I'm not sure what the economics look like on that.
Mhm. We can dive deeper in it as we go along with this process, I think. You're muted, Jim. You're muted.
That better, I guess. Are we having an official meeting now?
I knew you were going to
Well, we
ask.
haven't called the meeting to order, so I'm trying to get a hold of David.
Obviously, there's no
Lynn.
order in this meeting, of course.
I know what we do have a quorum though, right? So we are
We do,
we have to probably follow the law, open meeting law at some point.
yeah.
Yeah.
Hold on 1 second. Because I know there was, to be fair.
While Michelle is doing that, could we gather together in person instead of online? I mean, I think the conversations would be much better.
You're talking about tonight?
No, 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 no.
Well, there's nothing prevent us from all zooming in from the same location, right?
We could sit around a table and Zoom.
Although that may also violate the spirit of open meeting law.
Oh,
Well, the governor's order expires March 30th or 31st, so be interesting to see how that's going to be addressed and if it's going to be extended or give communities the flexibility to offer.
Yeah.
If I were to guess, it will be extended.
Yeah, because the prior law, if I remember, was you had to have a quorum on site, but you could do hybrid pre-COVID. Just the quorum on site was the problem, along with the technical difficulties of doing a hybrid.
Well, I tried to reach out to David and Lynn. We can wait 5 more minutes and then start at 7:10. Is that reasonable?
okay.
I think we can start, Michelle, and they
Okay.
can jump in.
All right, welcome everyone. It's 7:06. I'd like to call the meeting to order. I sent out the agenda and materials. You know, we have quite a few things we wanted to cover tonight. So the first, we'll make the easy ones, do the easy ones first. I have approval of meeting minutes. I sent out the meeting minutes for January 5th and for January 23rd. The 23rd meeting was the joint meeting of our committee, short-term rental and planning board. Mark, do I need to do each motion separately or can I do them jointly?
You can do them jointly.
Okay, so before making a motion, are there any updates or edits to the meeting minutes that were sent out?
The only one I suggested to you was, I think you had me nominating Mike Raw.
Michael, I got that one.
Or
Yeah.
vice chair, yeah.
So, yep. So in the update, in the final copy, that will be corrected. Okay, we have no feedback or comments or edits on the meeting minutes. May I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes for January 5th, 2023 and for January 23rd, 2023?
So moved.
That was Jim moved, and may I have a second?
Second,
Second by Michael. Okay, so roll call vote. Mark,
Aye.
Michael,
Mark, I, Mike, I,
Patrick,
Aye.
Jim,
Aye.
and the chair is I. Is there any, I have a screen, my screen covered. Okay, there's no one else. So the meeting minutes are approved. So thank you, everyone. Okay, so then the next item on the agenda was to discuss the final plans for the community engagement, confirm our schedule, duties, and responsibilities. I had sent out before the meeting, and I apologize, my timeliness wasn't that great. The facilitators guide from HPP, excuse me, from MAPC. So let me share my screen, can walk through it together. And then if there are other questions, I can definitely reach back out to them. Okay, can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. All right, let me just. Okay, so I thought this is really handy for them to have. So it's a facilitator's guide in preparation for the day of the event. We know people are registering for the event because I tried it and registered. I sent out an email to like 25 friends and 10 of them have already responded saying they're going and they're registering. So great. I was excited to hear that. And we posted it on social. It's on the town website. I've distributed the flyers to all of the public places around town, put them in the stores. Just going to hit a couple more places. It's in the Council of the Aging, the library. So we're getting the word out. I also sent an email to the committee with a draft email. If you want to send it to your Nahant network and friends, letting them know of the event and asking them, inviting them to join. So that would be great as well. If you can get that done, you know, like by the weekend, so they can have it on their calendar. I think in terms of like communication and stuff, we've definitely gotten the word out there and it's on social. So, you know, that's, I think we're doing what we can to, you know, hopefully get a good outcome and good results. My hope is we get, I don't know, 50, 100 people. I'm really being optimistic.
Yeah, you are.
Okay, so Alex, Christian, and John are going to be there for the event. Alex is the content lead, so he'll be kind of the conductor producing all the final materials. Christian, the event lead, and then John will be working with Christian and Alex on facilitation, as well as all of us will be part of the facilitation group as well for each of the boards. One of the things I wanted to do was to collect names and phone numbers, but I think I have most of them, so I'm not going to do it tonight in the meeting, but I'm going to ask you all, and I'll send an email update on this as well, is to, you know, by Monday, send me your, confirm your, you know, the best phone number to reach you. And then what we may do is I'm gonna see, and since all of you are here, see which, if you had a preference to which board you wanted to speak to, you know, let me know and we can make sure that you're linked up to that board. And I can also make adjustments the day of as well. But everyone on the committee that attends needs to really have a role and help with the facilitation. So day before, our MAPC will take care of all the final materials, event design, everything. I had sent them a picture of what town hall looks like for a public meeting. I sent them a couple of different pictures I was able to find, make sure we're all set. And we're ready to go. So I think we're going to be good there. This gives kind of just a visual of what we expect to have set up. So where the projection screen is, that's the front of the front of the hall. So, and on the stage, so we'll put a projection screen up. I've asked Tony to seat for 125 people. We'll have a podium on stage, right? And then we'll have various boards around, kind of a horseshoe, the 8 boards that we have talked about. So let me stop there to see if there's any questions.
The logistics all seem good. I'm still concerned about getting on the same page about the content.
Okay, we'll get there. We'll get there. So MAPC is planning to be there about 6 o'clock. I'm probably going to be there as well, just to help out with anything, run, chase, whatever needs to be done. Technical setup, projector, computer, download presentation material, mic and stuff. So we know town hall has much of this. We just we've been swapping some emails with Tony and stuff just to finalize all of that stuff. So it's ready. MAPC will bring tablets for sign in and check in. So if they didn't register before the event through Eventbrite, what they can do is check in, and it's a means of capturing people that are attending in their email address. So if they want to get more information, or if we push out any updates through MAPC, they'll be able to be included. In terms of the physical area, so the front area will be set up with signs directing people, you know, balloons, all of the things that you would expect, you know, to get, you know, for an event to, you know, showcase what we're doing. Give me one quick second. I just want to see. Welcome, Lynn.
Sorry, I had
No,
a
that's okay.
frantic client call and I was kind of stuck. So
Nope, that's
glad to be
okay.
here. Thanks for making this happen, Michelle.
Yep, glad to have you. And I just would like to ask who's on the iPhone. If that's a member of the committee, if you can unmute yourself and just let us know.
Yeah, it's David.
Thank you, David. Excellent. Okay, so I'm going to go back to, we're going through the facilitator's guide, and I'm going to go back to sharing my screen.
One thing, Michelle, can you talk to Tony, perhaps put the signboard up at the causeway about this?
I checked with the police station today about that. We can't. The reason is it doesn't go up until April because of the weather. Unless someone wants to lean on them to do it sooner. But we are getting inclement weather over the weekend, so I would advise not to. So here's my creative idea. I was going to go to Staples tomorrow or Saturday and get a poster board and put my creative talents together and put something that's on that big community board that says, you know, community event, affordable housing, town hall, you know, something that's just eye-catching for folks.
Not too much information on it, though.
Right.
No, it's not.
So
It's
something
going to be
like-
just something colorful to tell them that here's the meeting date, time, place.
Just housing event, town hall, Wednesday night, something that simple, right?
Yep, exactly. Okay, all the things that you expect in terms of the welcome table. There will be, we are going to have snacks. I asked Tony's permission. I'm going to send him a list so they can go to BJ's and pick up some water and sweet and salty savory snacks. Just to, you know, obviously people will probably need a little something after a couple of hours.
Michelle,
And-
can I just say something?
Yes.
You're doing so much. Do you want to delegate something to willing people like me to help out? I mean,
So I think between myself and MAPC, we've got the first hour covered. It'll be the second hour, and when we do the facilitation with the boards, that's where we need the committee to really help with that. So, and I'll get into that in just a minute.
Okay.
So, in the main room, we'll have the welcome table, we'll have agendas, the area will be set up for the easels. MAPC will be bringing all the necessary materials to have that staged. And then we'll do a quick, I would say, if you could be there by 6:30, we'll do a quick huddle, just to kind of go over logistics, greeters, all of that kind of stuff. We may need a couple people from the committee at the welcome table to greet people as they're coming in. And then we'll still be strategically around the hall, welcoming people as they're checking in. They're probably going to walk around, look at the board. And it's a great opportunity to just continually start that conversation, get them engaged, ask them, what their thoughts are, see if they, have they been following us? Do they have ideas and questions? And remember, this is not like a public hearing where you're just sitting and listening to a presentation and then go to the podium and ask questions. There's going to be a presentation. We'll open the meeting because we will be in quorum. There'll be the presentation. We're going to break out to this community engagement piece where people are going to be asked to walk around and look at the different boards and engage with members of the committee about the content that's on each of these boards. And then we'll regroup for, one final opportunity if there's any, questions from the public, and then we'll close. So the 2 hours should go pretty quickly, I think. And hopefully people will, it's a different type of forum than what I think most of us have been accustomed to, but it's definitely something that's been done before. And we can have a tremendous amount of success from it. So I'm looking forward to it. So if there's someone speaking or had a question. Nope, okay.
Well,
So then,
I'd like to say, no, are we going to be informed of sort of the outline that John Cruz will follow in his presentation? The reason I'm concerned about that is that we have not had a discussion of the housing needs assessment. And from my point of view, that's a very flawed document. And I wouldn't want to see that outline followed in the presentation to the town.
okay, so just as, all right, so let's take a break from the facilitators guide for a moment. So we have reviewed the housing needs assessment with MAPC and we reviewed the executive summary. And I know some folks have provided feedback back to MAPC for that. A draft of the housing needs assessment and the executive summary is on nahant.org because we want to get the information out to folks. Now, people have various opinions in terms of the information, but remember, a lot of that is data driven through HUD, through the US Census, through DHDC. So it's really hard, especially when it's all data driven, to determine or how to, if we feel like the numbers are skewed or, there's something in there that doesn't make sense, real specific to the data, then that's the thing that can be challenged. I guess I need more clarity in terms of, how we can better enhance those documents.
Well, the housing needs assessment, as it was distributed to us, as far as I'm concerned, is a very flawed document, and it is not appropriate to our community, and raises issues that don't need to be raised in the way they are raised there. So,
Okay.
in other words, if we take any responsibility for that, then that's one thing. If it is just John Cruz's document and he's going to give his consultant's view, regardless of what we think or whatever, then that's another thing. So it's important to know whether it's our document or the consultant's document.
So it's a document of the town because the town has hired and engaged MAPC to help us with this producing the end housing production plan document, right? Whatever that end final work product is going to look like. And this is just one input to understand the information about the community. Now, I know, things like 40% of the town could actually qualify for affordable housing. That's staggering, right? We were all blown away by that. There's some other data and information around age of residents and income and all that. But remember, that is all data driven from the US Census from 2020. And
Yep.
so that's why it's challenging for me to say, okay, unless we can point to some real specific things that we think that need to be.
But Michelle, I think to Jim's point, the committee hasn't voted to adopt this report. So I
Right.
mean, it's not. I think it very much is the consultant's report to the committee, to the town, and the town hasn't endorsed it or accepted it. So Jim, I think your point is very much valid in that, and we don't have to, and therefore maybe your concerns don't have to be necessarily addressed in
Maybe
their
the best-
report.
Maybe the best thing to say is it's been prepared by the consultant, it's been delivered to the committee, and it's under consideration by the
And I'm
committee.
fine with that.
But I don't think, we don't even, I think eventually we're going to have to vote on a final recommendation to the town at some final meeting, but I don't think there's any requirement that we vote on this
Right,
initial analysis.
I
I'm not
agree.
I'm not suggesting under consideration means we need to rule on it. We're
Right,
just,
absolutely.
it's an input.
Absolutely.
Exactly. I look at all of these as inputs to the final work product. That's the work product that we present to the Board of Selectmen in the town. So these are just interim deliverables that we're using to help get us to the end result.
But my problem is presenting this to this meeting next week as, sort of the work of our committee. I'm really upset about that.
Okay.
John Cruz has been at this for a long time. I respect his experience and so forth. But I think, especially given this committee, we have certain kinds of intimate knowledge about the town of Nahant, its society, its culture, and so forth, that is not represented in that report. And that's a deep concern to me.
Well, the truth is, we've not had a chance to dissect or discuss or deliberate on the detailed elements of the report. So to the extent anybody inquires, the boards are the work of the consultant, which is an input to the deliberations of the town, of the committee, rather than anything that's been decided upon.
And it's the housing needs assessment that I'm referring to, not the boards, the housing needs
Right.
report.
So respectfully for the consultants, right? They haven't been in the town, I think, to your point, understand like the society and the culture, right? This was all data driven by information that's either sourced or available publicly for them to put this housing needs assessment together. So that other piece around society and culture, I think that's something that we could probably add to the housing needs assessment to complement it, to your point. But I don't know how, I guess, I look at things and kind of maybe a mathematical piece, like we need to determine how, it's applicable, it will be applied, right? And we want to make sure about whatever we document, right, is always going to be reviewed by others. So I feel better when it's on the data side, because we know the source of the data and where the data is coming from. But when you put subjective pieces of content in front of different audiences, that becomes a slippery slope. And so we can do it. I'm not adverse to it, but I think we need to just determine what makes sense.
So I just don't want to see John Cruz get up there on next week and essentially go through the outline that he's sent out, that's been distributed, for which I have very, very critical comments. I don't want, and if he does it at the public meeting, it can start arguments and disagreements that ultimately we're going to have some for sure. But
So my understanding is the presentation is going to be about affordable housing, right? The education, clarifying misnomers, right? Really helping people understand big A to little a, right? Things that we've been learning. So the public understands how this all comes to place, right? There was some good information that was in the housing needs assessment, some other addendums that they provided as well to really help bring people that will, as they look at the different boards around the hall, really try to figure out, okay, how does this fit into Nahant, right? What makes sense? I mean, the data is staggering, but now it really is going to come down to is, how do I feel about this, right? How important is this to me and my community? And what are my views on this? And then, obviously people are going to say, well, where are they going to go? What are they going to look like? This is what I would envision. This is what, some may say, I'd rather see tiny homes on, in some location, right? And I think we agree that's possible, right? We're not going to say it's not possible. We're going to look at all of the ideas and determine what makes sense.
Well, I've written in detail to John Cruz, and some others may be familiar with what I wrote, and got no response at all. So I have no idea what is going to be in any report that they present.
Okay. So I know that they have reviewed it. And I know you've shared it with members of the committee.
Mhm.
I've read it a few times. I think there is some information that was valuable. I think there was some information I would have liked it maybe described differently.
Mhm.
I don't have John's final presentation. I can ask for it and see if he can send it out to us in advance. So we can, if we do have feedback, but I want to be careful about this because, anytime we project an opinion outside of the meeting, it's a problem. And that's a huge matter before any committee when we're using email and communicating. So those,
Wait, John.
let me finish, Mike, let me finish my thought here. The information you provided should have been, while it was distributed to the committee, we're talking about it. I would have preferred to have it on the agenda, and it's not on the agenda. So we're in conflict right now.
Yeah. So there's probably couple of thousand words that I've written. So it's hard to, should I sit and sort of take this and read the document and take an hour to read it or something? Michelle, I'm not criticizing you.
No, I know you're not.
It's just, I am very concerned about the divisiveness that can follow the kinds of things that we're trying to accomplish. And if it counts the way our goals are presented, for instance, and the way the document that John Cruz wrote does not present our goals, and some of the context that he had, I think, is fatally flawed. The data that you're talking about, I understand. I agree with you that it's valuable and needs to be considered. It is how it's presented, and if it's presented next week in ways that we have not discussed, then I'm going to be upset.
So
Sorry.
that's a data-driven document in my mind. That's how I view it. And, that's how I'm positioning it. And I think from speaking with John, his presentation is about what is affordable housing and really helping and educating the community. I think we can definitely go back and, go through a page turn on it to finalize and get additional comments and feedback into it. So, it is a final document and an input into our overall plan. But without them being here tonight, obviously I'll definitely follow up with them tomorrow. I think, great feedback and well-intended, but I don't think we can really do much or make any further comments about it
Well,
honestly. And
wait a
Right
minute, wait a
now,
minute.
we can.
Whatever John is going to deliver on Wednesday is going to be public. It's not a deliberation of this committee. So there is no violation of anything for him to advance, share it with us. So at least we're prepared with what's going to be said. I mean, it's not something that the committee is deliberated about. It's another bit of input. So I don't see that there's any basis to hide the ball. And I'm a little bit concerned about our mechanisms here in terms of dialogue. We've been told that we're not, we can't share any documentations or written stuff amongst members of the committee generally, but then there seems to be no mechanism to get the thoughts of Jim or me, which have been communicated to you and John, into the dialogue. And the point of the committee is to have dialogue on these issues. So I've been waiting for the shoe to drop so that we can discuss the substance of things, but we seem to be tying ourselves in knots procedurally.
well, I mean, that's, we're working under, public transparency, right? And so that's I work in the private sector, so it's a little different, but in the public sector, everything needs to be out in the open, for simple terms. So, what we can do is,
Deliberations need to be public.
yes, but even
With
when
a
you
quorum.
are
Among a quorum.
among a quorum, but when you're communicating an
can talk
opinion,
individually, or I had a meeting with 2 other members of the committee at town hall, and we can move less than a quorum, but 3 people participating. So anyway, I'm sorry,
Okay.
Michelle.
no, that's okay. So let me do this. What I can do is make sure, we can definitely meet as often as you want. We can do a page turn of the documents, come up with a list of recommended changes to the housing needs assessment, so we can definitely finalize it and the executive summary. But I'm going to need some assistance so we can get it to the level that everyone's in agreement to, and then we can, definitely vote and sign off on it. In terms of next week, let me go back to the facilitation guide. Give me 1 second to share. Okay, and just get out of my way. All right. So we left off with, hopefully by 6:30, the committee is at town hall. We'll do a 30-minute huddle before the event starts, finalize all of the other activities that will happen, go through the content boards. Right now, what we have listed is what is affordable housing, what is on the housing production plan, who struggles in Nahant with housing, how much affordable housing is in Nahant, affordable housing graph, and then affordable housing in Nahant. So these are all things the topics we've covered, we've reviewed in detail, so they were making those updates. We'll have the welcome and check-in. Participants will have a chance to mingle, and then we're going to kick off around 7:30, 7:35. So I talked about calling the meeting to order, remarks by Mark and Tony as appropriate, recognizing the people on the committee, and then I will do a warm transfer over to John. So about what John's presentation is here. If you look at the facilitation guide, he's going to talk about MAPC. He's going to talk about what is the housing production plan and why are we doing one. The purpose of this forum and in its intent. So really to help people understand, unlike traditional public hearings, this isn't a community engagement. What our project timeline is going to look like. He'll talk about the Nahant data and the housing needs background. So some of that's coming from the housing needs assessment. Again, data that, they have sourced. And then, he'll discuss the information and the engagement boards. Then we're going to break out to those engagement boards, right? And that's where, we'll all have a role to just talking with people, asking them their views and questions, gaining information. We'll come back and then, there'll be some discussion. I just want to read the rest of this. So in terms of the engagement boards, I think there are some good trigger questions here that we can, paraphrase for ourselves. So things like, how is this going to impact me? Asking the resident, whether it's, the elderly, young parents, families, returning college graduates, people who want to live in our community. What does the future of the town look like? That's a really big component. We know it's an aging population, but at some time it's gonna, turn over. And so it's an opportunity for the people attending to, participate and really, put their views down and really help us understand. And then there's going to be a board that's going to show some illustrations of different housing types. And we talked about this previously. There's, under the 3A component, they're looking for, different types of housings. What does that look like? And specifically for our community, things like housing types and style and aesthetics are important. So we want something that makes sense. We don't want to see a, 15-story building, somewhere, right? Let's see. There'll be some other activities where we'll have some butcher paper on a wall or a table, and participants will have an opportunity to leave some sticky notes and stuff. And this is just a great way for people to get their thoughts on paper, and our consultants will take it back and really, go through what people have been writing about. Things they'll ask, what's one question that you have about everything that we're doing? We want to capture those questions. Tell us about Nahant. What's that one favorite thing, right? That's it. I think that will help to the culture and society piece, Jim, that you're asking for, because again, the consultants haven't been here long enough to know about Nahant. We always say Nahant's unique, truly. I think everyone will raise their hand and say, oh, we're really unique. You have to be here to really understand that. And then the other question around what's affordable housing mean to you? Everyone has different ideas what it is. They think it's low income housing. They don't realize that people with a certain income do qualify. There's all of those different parameters. So hopefully we can help really educate the people and get some ideas from folks. I think this is a great opportunity for that, and that's why I want to make sure that we all come into it with real positive views about how to help work with our community.
So Michelle, I would like
Yes.
to put a question publicly right now, and maybe other people know the answer to this. I do not. Here's the question. Are deed restricted affordable units, if they exist in Nahant, and subsidized housing units, we have 48 of those, both counted toward our required 10% minimum? And if the answer to this question, the answer to the question is the most elemental part of our inquiry. The deed restricted part in particular, and the question of in the report, it refers to subsidized housing units, I think, as the only ones that are countable toward our compliance with the 10%. I don't think that's true.
No,
But-
I don't think that's true either.
No,
it's-
but I
it's
think
in
we
the
don't.
damn report.
Well, but I don't think we do have any other deed restricted housing in Nahant. That's the current state, I believe.
Right.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
So but the question is, in the report, it says we were required to have 10% subsidized housing units in Nahant. That's what it says in the draft that we got.
But it also, the big piece is the depends, right? Because it can be units or area. And so the GLAM analysis is another input that we can consider around if we can meet that threshold as well.
So
That doesn't answer Jim's question.
Yeah, but hold on, in terms of terminology, deed restricted is usually lumped together as subsidized housing. So you're giving a developer some development rights in compensation for them subsidizing the housing of a low income unit.
Right.
So it is a form of subsidization. It's not the same kind, but usually it is lumped together, Jim.
But I can
People-
imagine someone getting up and saying, do you mean we're going to have 10% of subsidized housing like the housing authority in Nahant? That could be a question. It's a reasonable question. And I just don't feel the clarity has been presented either in that report that was sent out to us or anyplace else. So if Michelle, you are going to be asking John to reformat this, to rewrite it and give us an outline of what he's going to say, I think that would be very, very helpful, and that we should get that beforehand.
So,
In particular, an answer about precisely what kind of units will qualify to span the gap between 48 existing and 161 required. And in Nahant, I mean, that number is calculable for this town. We know what it is, and we just need to have clarity on precisely what units will count to that, or how you calculate what will count, because somebody's going to ask about it, and we're going to look foolish if we can't answer it.
That's right.
okay. So I'll take those questions back to John. But I didn't get the impression that this was the focus of the community engagement. It was more about introducing what HPP is doing, right? What this mission is that we're working on, right?
Yeah.
Really to help generate ideas from the public. And you're right, we're going to get those public questions. People are going to say what,
That's-
who, where, when, totally.
Right.
And we're not there yet. And I think that's fine to say that. Remember, we
But I-
only started at the end of November. We've only met a few times, right? And
Yeah.
there's still data pieces that we need to identify and review. And some of them, like you said, in terms of meeting the 10%, could be a combination of the subsidized housing plus identifying affordable housing locations that can be built out.
I agree with all the
Okay.
constraints you just identified, Michelle, and they're correct, and they're valid in terms of what we do and what we know and what we internally know in this group. However, the public does not know all those qualifiers that you just described. They're getting a flyer that says, come to town hall and see the signboards and hear the presentation. And they do not understand that this is a step one of maybe 4 or 5 or whatever. And they're going to come with the expectations that we've got more in the way of answers. And the truth is, we're just opening a funnel to take input from the town and giving them some bits to stimulate their thinking. If we do it in the context of this is a funnel for input, that I think will help set a context. But without that, people are going to come with the kind of expectations that Jim has described, and we're not going to be equipped to deal with them credibly.
Mike, I thought we already agreed on this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought we already agreed on the last meeting that what's important here is for Michelle as chair, but more importantly as John as our consultant, to frame what this engagement is and what it is not upfront. And
To frame it, I'm sorry, to frame it in the way I said, or what?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, well, that's fine. If we're on the same page about that, then I withdraw my concern. But I didn't hear anything about that tonight. And I'm a little bit concerned that the general public's perception is going to be that we have done and digested and structured a lot more than we have. And with that clash of expectations, I don't think is helpful for what we're trying to do.
So in John's presentation, I mean, he's outlined here the purpose of the forum and the intent, right? And so, you know, like I mentioned earlier, you've only just recently started and had a few meetings. So I think if there are expectations that we're going to have all of this, you know, data in our brains, right? We'd be really good if we do. But there are going to be some things that we're going to have to take away and come back to them, especially around, you know, the number of units, the composition of the units, what that looks like. We're just not there yet. And I think we're absent of some data pieces to get us there. But the community input's important because we want to know what their views are of when we get to that number, what their expectation is of what those units might look like, right?
So Michelle, let me just, I don't want to be
It's
argumentative,
okay.
but let me just ask you to ask John to distribute an outline of precisely what he's going to be saying at that public meeting in his presentation. And that would give us a chance to give him a little feedback and say, yeah, you don't want to go down that road just yet, or something like that.
I will ask. All
Okay, thank you. Thank you,
All
Michelle.
right, so I think we've covered the rest of these items. We'll close the meeting at 9. We'll ask to bring the meeting to order. We'll definitely allow 10 or 15 minutes for final public comment. So if anyone wants to make a comment, ask a question that they weren't able to ask, we'll give them that opportunity. Then I'll ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting because we have the quorum of the committee. We'll break down, return supplies, that kind of stuff, debrief, if we have any questions among ourselves. But then, and I'll look to schedule a meeting for next week as well. So we can keep all of the information fresh in our minds and kind of talk about what we heard from the meeting and work with the consultants. Okay, so that brings us to.
I'm sorry, are we expecting to hold a public meeting of this committee at the open forum?
So what happens is, Mike, because we're meeting as a quorum, we have to officially open the meeting as HPP
Okay.
and then close the meeting, right?
And we're not expecting to deliberate or to have any.
No,
Okay.
exactly. There's no
That-
deliberation or decisions or anything, but because of open meeting law and structure, we just have to do the official piece, which we'll do. And then, work with the consultants on the results.
Well, wait a minute. So are we technically going to be in session as a meeting from the beginning of this event?
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
Okay, well, that means that has a significant open meeting issue. It means that any quorum of us cannot get together because we're not going to be able to have public observance of that because there's going to be people all over the room.
No, I don't think so.
oh, I see what you're saying.
we're making this-
So yes,
Go ahead, I'm sorry. We're gonna be.
so we're gonna clean up after the
be there,
meeting
Michael. We're all
and then,
Therefore, it's a public meeting in which we can deliberate. We can express opinions.
No, we cannot.
no, we
because we're-
can't. We're not, that's not what this is for, Jim.
I
This is
understand
an
that. but-
interactive engagement with the public. We're doing the technical piece of opening the meeting and closing the meeting. But the engagement part is with the public, right? There's no deliberations, there's no decisions, right? There's gonna be a presentation. We're gonna break out to the community boards, gather information from the public, and then close the meeting. I'm sorry, have a brief public comment. Someone wants to make a statement and then close the meeting.
All right.
The point is, Jim, if a quorum of us get together in a corner of the room and are discussing something, the rest of the room is not going to be able to participate or hear or whatever. Likewise, people on Zoom, et cetera, et cetera.
I
Yeah,
have
so we're
learned
just
you're
gonna
right.
help clean up, get the hall ready back to where it needs to be. And we will move on and I'll work with all of you to schedule another meeting so we can get together and debrief. Okay,
Thank you for
Thank
clarifying
you.
that about the
Yep.
session. Yeah, that's very helpful to know.
okay, good. Okay, next steps for the committee. So, since I have you, do you want to meet next Thursday on March 9th?
Sure.
Well,
Mark, does that work okay for you?
yes. Mhm.
Okay. Thank you.
Do we
And
have an
I'll-
option other than Thursdays? Sorry to jump in. It's-
Yeah, so our community is pretty busy, Lynn. So we've got FinCon that's meeting a couple times a week, CPC that's meeting also. School
know.
committee that's meeting. We've had, other groups like the Cultural Council, Golf Committee, and so when I go and look at the calendar, it's pretty full. So let me just pop over there real quick to see what's going on. So right now, you're meeting on Tuesday at
Yep.
7.
Yep.
The only thing going on Monday is the Memorial Day Committee and the Nahant Housing Authority. I don't know if Mondays are better for people or not. We can certainly do Monday, but Thursday looks like the optimal day.
We can do Mondays.
I can't do Mondays.
Okay, yeah. I remember that, Mike. You said you had a conflict.
I can do Thursday.
Okay. Sorry.
I
Lynn.
will do Thursday.
Okay,
I may have a conflict next week, but go ahead.
Yeah.
okay. All right. Let's pop back to my agenda. So next steps for the committee. Okay. So the only other thing I had under old and new business, I owe people just an update on the action item, so I'll get that updated and distributed out to folks. I did want to share under new business, some updates that were done to our webpage. So folks can, if you're asked and people want to see what's going on, I can show you. Okay, so this is nahant.org. So if you go out to committees and boards, and then go down to Housing Plan Subcommittee, you'll see this is our page. Our contact email is listed, and we've added some new information for our meeting notices, materials, the GLAM analysis, the housing needs assessment, the community engagement, and then we'll be adding 3A. So if you're asked, how do I get some information? You can definitely direct them to nahant.org and our webpage. We've already started carving out pieces of information and, posting them. So things like we've posted the GLAM analysis to make sure it's available.
Michelle, is the housing needs analysis posted?
It is. Both draft documents are posted. Also included are the context communities and the housing needs assessment terms.
Okay.
Okay. I wanted to just make sure people were aware of that. Okay. Then I do open it up to see if anybody else had any new items they wanted to discuss tonight. Okay, so I have one other new item and just one announcement. I wanted to let the board know that Heather Goodwin resigned this week from the committee. She has a personal conflict that's come up. So she's not going to be able to continue with her role. So sad to see her go. She's tremendously valuable, has beautiful heart, and hopefully we can reach out to her later on, for any thoughts and ideas she might have as a resident that can still help support us.
Will somebody be appointed in her place?
I need to talk to Tony about that. I mean, we have, 6, 7 of us right now, 8 with Patty right now. So we do have a full board, so we may not need to fill the role. There's no requirement. The number was based on trying to get a good cross section across the community with representation from planning and hot housing and CPC. But I'll talk to Tony and see whether we fulfill that role or not. Okay, so I think that brings us to the end to citizens forum. So I think we have one citizen on. I don't know if she has any comments, but if she wants to raise her hand and unmute, she's certainly welcome. I don't see anybody else from the public. Okay. All right. If not, then I have 7:55. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved by Jim. And then may I have a second?
I'll second it.
And David will second. So roll call vote. We'll start with Mark,
Yes.
Michael,
Yes.
Patrick,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Jim,
Aye.
David,
Yes.
and the chair is aye. It is 7:55 p.m. We course corrected tonight. Apologize for the technical issues, but thanks for everybody for your flexibility. We'll make sure we get it right for the next meeting, and stay tuned for updates. I will continually get those out to everybody.
So we're gonna post for next Thursday as well as next Wednesday, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Wednesday's already posted, so if you go and look at the community calendar, it's out there. So,
Thank you, Michelle, for your efforts tonight.
Thank you.
yeah, no
Yes,
problem.
thank
That's
you,
what I'm here
Michelle.
for,
Thank you,
and
Michelle.
I'm happy to do it. So we'll, we cordially disagree and agree on things, and that's what this committee is
Right.
for. And we've got a great group of people, so we're going to continually to press forward.
Great.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Michelle.
everyone. Have a
Thank you.
great
Great
evening.
leadership.
We'll talk again. Bye.
Bye.